Hey YouTube and all my fellow Talkboxers or soon-to-be Talkboxers, this is Martin Ross and I'm coming to you with Talkbox Basics Chapter 3, Facts. Before we get to the facts, I want to tell you guys something about me. I have two albums out right now called Finding Ground and The Mind of Martin Ross. They're my latest releases, so please in the description, check it out. If you love the Talkbox, please support me, get the albums, and I guarantee you won't be displeased. So let's get into it. So these are the questions that I'm frequently asked. So if you referred to this video, please understand that I felt it was easier for me to tell you than to write it out. So I want to talk to you guys about the most important thing about the Talkbox is the tube. I'm always asked about boiling it. Why do I boil it? As I said before, I boil it for hygiene and also for to make the vinyl a lot looser and more comfortable for me. When I put it in a bowl, I put water and bleach in it and I boil it for about 5 to 10 minutes. Now I'm going to stress that I do not own any responsibility of what you do. You're doing this on your own accord, so understand that. Once I've boiled it for 10 minutes, I turn off the stove, let it sit for about 2-3 minutes, get some hot pads or gloves, whatever you use to help your hands from not getting hot, and pour it in the sink and let it rest, okay? Then I kind of air it out, whip it around, air it out, let the water get out, and then I put it on my Talkbox and then I put it in my mouth and I get it into a position that feels comfortable. So, this feels so comfortable. Stuff like that. So again guys, when you're boiling your tube, make sure you boil it for about 5 to 10 minutes. Let it rest. After 10 minutes, turn off the stove, let it rest, and then dip out the water, and then when it's still warm, that's when you need to use it and get it positioned. As you can see in the first chapter, I talked about this nipple here. Now I might get this backwards or wrong, but I think it's 1/2 OD outer diameter and 3/8 inner diameter is what I use for my nipple and my tube. So the Talkbox band sheet comes with a tube already, but to me it was too flimsy and I prefer this kind of thicker vinyl feel. Again, vinyl is different from rubber. Vinyl is more like plastic, so it's going to be really stiff. When you boil it more often, it starts getting looser and more comfortable, so that's why I say to boil it. Again, for hygiene reasons, please boil it so that way your saliva doesn't get stuck in the tube. So I want to talk quick on the saliva. Now a lot of people say, well, I get the saliva in my Talkbox and it makes noises. Here's how you handle that. A lot of the times, it's going to be gross, you got to swallow your saliva. That'll stop that. Another thing, if you can't always catch the saliva, is tip your Talkbox. A lot of people don't do that because what happens is it probably will stay mostly in this area, because if you're constantly playing, when you're having the sound waves going, it's actually, sound waves is a force, believe it or not, it's a force. So it'll push out some of that saliva, and that's that sound you're probably hearing too, that gurgling sound, is because this force is pushing that saliva and it's making it, you're hearing it bounce around in there. So typically tip your Talkbox over. It does not change the quality. No, it does not. A lot of people say it does, and I'll prove it right here. Ooh, yeah. And it protects you from the saliva getting in the Talkbox. I think that, to me, helps me greatly. So that's what I would suggest. Now, tube size. When I'm talking about tube size, we're talking about the length. Now, the length I say from feet to head. The reason why is some people prefer to attach their Talkbox to the mic. I'll be just opinionative here. I don't like that. I prefer to have it loose and move around because I prefer to have freedom, and I like to dance in my music. So I prefer to keep it with me at all times, not attached to a mic. There's nothing wrong with that, but your mobility is gone. Another tip is to use a headset. I've never really Talkboxed with a mic. When I first started performing, I did, but I prefer the headset. I feel more comfortable with the headset. I have more movability, and I can get around a lot. Mobility is the word. Mobility. You want to be mobile. So that will do it for the tube. So let's move on to the Talkbox. Now, I'm always asked about the Talkbox. 40 watts, 200 watts, 100 watts. In my opinion, it really doesn't matter. It only matters if you're not amplifying yourself. If you want to be in a room like I am in there, and above you, the screen is the mic, and you want to capture what's ever around you, then that's when your options of upping the wattage is more important. When I record, I just record at 40 watts. It's really basic, all I need, and it's really easy to find a 40 watt amplifier anywhere. It's pretty cheap too now, and so that's why I go with 40 watts, because you're already amplifying yourself. If you have a mic, someone's always going to amplify you when they're doing the mixing. If you got a good HOF key or FOH, front of house, they will know how to bring your vocals up. They will know how to make you as loud. And I think that's really important there, is to know who your FOH is and let them know I'm using a Talkbox. I might need a little more boost if you're using 40 watts. Do I see any difference in recording? No, because when you're mixing and mastering, you're always going to amplify your sounds. You're always going to amplify or compress your vocals in any way, so you're obviously going to amplify that. So in my opinion, no, I don't think that really matters when it comes to recording. If you're like me and you study mixing and mastering, you went to school for mixing and mastering, you'll notice that a lot of the times compression is going to fix a lot of that stuff, or a little bit of EQing or limiting and all that kind of stuff will do that. Multi-band compressor is really good for Talkbox, by the way. Now, a little secret that I don't think I've talked about, when it comes to, just in general, if you are an audio person and you record, it's always good to have clean power. Now, I prefer, with my 1/4" cable, is to use TRS, tip, ring, and sleeve. I prefer tip, ring, and sleeve over anything because you get a cleaner signal. Not saying it's the best signal, but you get the cleanest signal possible. Now, when it comes to plugging it into the wall, I've noticed and just in recording and in going back and forth from studios and live performances, that your Talkbox power supply and your Banshee power supply, if they're on the same circuit, sometimes you'll get some unwanted noise, and that's bad. It also could mean that you've got dirty power. So always make sure that you've got a good ground connection on your wall. If your wall doesn't have a good ground connection, you're going to get this thing called a ground loop, and that causes a lot of distortion. In my opinion, I have my Talkbox Banshee plugged into a different plug and my Talkbox into a whole different plug. They're not on the same power surge or outlet extender. I do that just so I can make sure that there's no problems. If you've got a good ground, I don't think you'll have issues. But if you've got, like me, I've got a bad surge protector, so it's really noisy sometimes. So I keep that separate. So just know that, all right? Now I'm going to move on to the synthesizer. So on the synthesizer, everybody asks me, well, what brand should I use? What brand should I use? One thing I won't suggest is the DX100. Now, every Talkboxer on here who's watching this is probably going to be like, dude, that's the best combination. It is. It's the best combination there is. If you can get your hands on one, great. Here's a problem. Being on a live show, I've had accidents. Anybody's going to have accidents. No matter how careful you are, you can get a roadie that says drop something, or yourself could bang it up against the wall and didn't know that. The DX100 was made almost 30 years ago, folks, and parts are kind of scarce now. They don't make them anymore. So until they make more DX100 remakes, I don't think in the future your parts are going to be readily available as you might think. And always buying from eBay doesn't mean that the product is going to work. I would suggest, if you are watching this and you want to become a Talkboxer, please, if you get a synthesizer, get something that's new, something that you can get warranted, and something that where you can replace the parts for cheap and not have to scour the internet for parts. That's why I say don't get the DX100. If you have the money, then get it. But in my opinion, I'm always about updating my, library, and it's always good to get a new keyboard. Nothing wrong with that. Analog is always great. This is digital. Whatever you prefer. So when it comes to that type of brand, a synthesizer, I'm not going to say strictly Korg. I prefer Korg because the company has one of the best customer service that I've had dealt with, and they're always readily available to fix your stuff. So when it comes to synthesizers, typically most of the synthesizers you're going to get are digital or PCM synthesizers, and if you do get an analog, great. So my tip to you guys for buying a synthesizer is just know that most and any of synthesizers will have a sawtooth patch. So if you like the keys or you like the accessibility, the easiness of using it, buy it. Don't go off what you see on the internet. Buy what works for you, because a synthesizer most synthesizers has the same thing: sawtooth, pulse wave, which is square wave, sine wave, which is kind of, you know, a pulse wave if you mess with it. Some will only just have saw, triangle, and square. That's fine. And what typically I tell people to do, and it's very basic, this is a very basic start, is to initialize your synthesizer, meaning reset it, because typically it's when it's initialized, the first setting is sawtooth. There you go. And typically it is polyphonic, meaning it can play all notes at the same time. You want to switch that to monophonic, so that way you get this noise, where one note can only be played one at a time. The reason being to do that is because you have to treat your Talkbox as vocal cords. You don't have two mouths, so you can't sing polyphonically. You just can't. So monophonic is where you want to make the settings go. So again, guys, very basic. Initialize your keyboard to a sawtooth and make it monophonic. From there, you can use filters to make it sound any kind of way, but that's just the basic patch, really, in a nutshell, for any or all synthesizers. Now, a while ago, I did a video back in like 2009, that's pretty long, of just a standard keyboard. It was a standard Yamaha keyboard, and all I did was use the output to the input of the Talkbox. From the keyboard output, input the Talkbox. And my opinion is the best thing to do is use the brass patch, because typically a brass patch is really based off a sawtooth wave. A lot of the times, the funky brass that you always hear that Roland used to do, that's off of a sawtooth. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, it's all up to you. If you don't want to use a sawtooth, use a flute patch, use whatever you want. But with a keyboard, it's going to be polyphonic, and if you've already have a keyboard, you just started, you don't need to go into, oh, I need to get all this into. Just use that, see if you're comfortable. A lot of problems that I've noticed is people say that the Talkbox is a lot harder than Auto-Tune. It is, and it will always be harder than Auto-Tune. And I want to make a statement here. Ben Harper said that this was an outdated technology or whatever. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Ben Harper doesn't Talkbox. He doesn't understand the Talkbox community. And if he's ever watching this, I just have to tell him, look, you're wrong, 100% wrong. This is not archaic. There's tons of people who use it, and it's not painful like you described. It is far not painful at all, as you described. But moving on from that, I want to let you guys know that it is not as easy as you think. If you don't understand scales, pitches, and chords, you may not understand the Talkbox. Some people have the ear, which is great. It's always good to have a good ear, but sometimes you need to know a little bit of theory on what you're doing. So if a song is in G minor, right? You have to play a G minor scale. That's a harmonic minor scale. But you have to understand that if the song is in G minor, you need to play in G minor. You can't just play all white keys in G minor. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And yes, Auto-Tune's a little bit easier. It's actually, Auto-Tune is not as easy as a lot of people think, because you have to understand how to detune and all that kind of stuff, and how to let the filters open, and how to make it sound right on the notes. So with Auto-Tune, basically all you have to do is try to sing in the pitch and set it to fit the key of the song. Now, going back to the keyboard, if you are a basic starter, you're okay, you're doing just fine. If you want to get busy into it, again, move on to a synthesizer. Now I want to talk to you guys about miking. People ask me all the time about how to get a clean vocal. It's all about mic positioning. In my opinion, I practice breathing like you were to sing. Again, treat your Talkbox as your vocal cords, alright? You gotta practice that. It's not easy, but you gotta practice. What I do is, before I record, which I shouldn't be doing, should record every moment, but I don't. I record and I practice singing the song that I want to write. And I practice that. And if I can't play it, then I practice my breathing, because it'll last in the long run. There's always that person who records tidbits of everything in the studio and then it sounds completed. But when you go live, it's going to be really, really tough to play. It really is. It really is. So I always suggest that you learn your song before you record it. I know it's weird, but you got to practice your breath. If you have a hard time breathing and you don't want that breathing sound, it's very simple. Just move away from the mic. If you don't want a noise, move it away from the mic. That's as easy as I could say it. I don't have any special plugins. I'm always asked, do you use this plugin? I don't. When I record, a lot of the times, half the time that's just straight recording. There's no plugin or filter that I'm using. It's just straight recording. So practice your breathing, move away from the mic in the mic positioning. Alrighty guys, so that's gonna do it for Talkbox Basics Chapter 3. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. Please, please, please. I have the fact list in the description, so take a look at the fact list in the descriptions. If I missed something while I was recording this, I will add it to the facts list, and you will be able to see it in the description. And again, questions, please leave it in the comments. Again, I want to take a few more seconds for you to please check out my original music. Actually, my latest releases is Finding Ground and The Mind of Martin Ross. They're in the description. If you love Talkbox, I guarantee you will like these albums. I work really hard on these albums. So please support a Talkboxer and get the albums. I want to thank you guys for sitting down for this long video. I appreciate every minute of your watching this. It means a lot to me. And if you again have any questions, leave it in the comment. But most importantly, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and again, as most important, share. This is Martin Ross. This was Talkbox Basics Chapter 3 Facts. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.